pre-recorded video for Blackbird. Hope you guys enjoy our content that we're going to discuss today. If you have questions or you would like us to discuss things further, please hit us up on the Facebook or in the comments below. Like people do this on web, like below, click the like button, hit the subscribe button. So if you have questions, comments, please leave them for us so that we can continue our conversation and learn and grow together. So I'm Megan. As always, Elizabeth is here and Micah. And today we're going to be discussing how people of color, specifically females, are treated when they run for office.
I think this subject is born from Kamala's vice president nomination or offer, I guess. So we wanted to take a moment and look at how people are treated, how Black women are treated, not only when they go to an office it's very prestigious, but even in local stuff. So we looked at a little bit of history and my words have lost me. So a little bit of history and how people have sort of dealt with being in office and how they're treated by other people.
So we've got I always feel like I'm going to say her name wrong. It's Camilla or Kamala? Kamala. We're going to talk about Kamala Harris. We're going to talk about Shirley Chisholm, and I think that's, for those of you who don't know, who ran for the presidential nomination back in the 70s?
I want to say so. She wasn't the first woman, but it also wasn't that recently.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about how women of color are treated when they run for office in America and how that's different than their white male counterparts are treated when they run for office. And I guess sort of overview is they're not treated well. And I think in our political system here in America, there is a lot of trash talking, from all sides when anyone runs. I think when though it is a person of color, especially a female of color, the trash talking gets very personal and derogatory and sexist. So what did you find, Micah?
On the history side, so Shirley Chisholm ran for president in 1972. She got kind of far. She didn't get the nomination, but she was seeking it. And I think it's interesting because she's quoted as saying that it wasn't so much her race that was a problem, but the fact that she was a woman. And I think part of that is she didn't admit the things that were being said about her, because she had this guy who was running her student campaign and was going to colleges and drumming up support, and he ran into problems. So he got to the airport, went to go pick up the stuff, the pamphlets and everything they were going to hand out, the boxes, and somebody had written "go home" on it. So I don't know if maybe she didn't hear about that, or maybe she was trying to soften the fact that she was having these issues.
I think that's important too to note, in that I think it's when you're running for office, right? And especially as a woman, if you complain about the way you're being treated, then it's see, women can't handle it.
Yeah.
So I do think that probably was a factor in the way she handled it, if that makes sense.
It does make me wonder, and that is probably, I would guess, is accurate, because you don't want to be too weak to run and be that target,
Mm-hmm.
The quote I like from her is So when she announced her candidacy, is I am not the candidate of Black America, although I am Black and proud. I am not the candidate of the women's movement of this country, although I am a woman and equally proud of that. I am the candidate of the people of America. I think that's so classy and so awesome. I love it.
That's a super classy quote. I like that.
Yeah.
Um,
She's also quoted as saying, racism is so universal in this country, so widespread and deep-seated, that it is invisible because it is so normal. Which is another one of those, like, she could have said that yesterday.
yeah. Yeah. I think that's a thing that is so, I mean, that's something Kamala could say right now, and, you know, it still be true and ring true, which is so upsetting. So many levels. And then you said something about, or I guess, do we have more that we want to say about Shirley?
I think that was it, because she didn't go into attacks on herself so much. Like, I think she was trying to keep it kind of classy. But I do think it's very cool that, like, she went for it, and she was very strong. And I wish she'd gotten further, but, you know, in 1972, it was really hard to do.
And I think, like, it says something that she got as far as she did, because she got very, very close, you know, to you know, making it, you know, to the at least like the nominating process. And I think even in today, there are women who don't make it that far. There are women of color who don't even make it, you know, that far. That they're, you know, the representative of their party, even if they're the best person for the job.
I think we'll probably get into that later, but that's an interesting sort of track to go down, is like, do we care that she's Black and a woman, or do we care that she can do her job? And, like, clearly one of those things is more important than the other.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of that sort of happens. I think that was a big thing with Barack, that people were like, well, you voted for him because he's Black. I'm like, no, I didn't vote for him because he's Black. I voted for him because he's the person for the job. He happens to be Black, and I do identify with that, and I think it's really cool and important, but that's not the reason that I voted for him. Like, I have a brain in my head to do research and, you know, figure things out for myself, and not just like blindly verse, like, I don't know what you stand for, but you're Black and I'm with you. Like, that's that's not a thing for me. I mean, it probably is for some people, but for me, it's not. Like, the person who is the best for the job is the person who should get the job.
Yeah. I remember being very excited voting for him because he was Black. But you know,
a year or two before he ran, like, I think my brother was the one who was like, and I had not heard of him at all, and David was like, he's the most presidential sounding candidate I've heard in a while.
He's so smart.
So yeah, but also, like, I remember, I think a year or two after he was elected, like, I was working at Bass Pro, and we were in the break room, and, like, somebody was complaining, and I must have had a look on my face. Like, one of the fishing managers was like, well, I feel like, you know, people were happy to vote for him. Like, he seemed like he was defending people who voted for him because he was Black. And I didn't say anything, but I really wanted to be like, I didn't vote for him because he was Black. I voted for him because he's a Democrat. Like, I really believe in what he stands for.
Yes.
But yeah.
And so then we're going to talk about, so we talked about a Democrat. We're talking about Democrats. But there are Black women and people of color on the other side. So let's talk about Condoleezza Rice.
I know. So I didn't know a lot about Condoleezza Rice. So when I started my research and I hit the cartoons that came out of Condoleezza Rice, I was a little bit more than floored. I missed them when they came out originally, and I don't understand. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. And I think especially with cartoons, like, because they're really, it's like memes on Facebook. Like, it's really easy to just put it out there, or not put it out there, but like to have your message received without going into a lot of detail, right?
Yeah.
So a political cartoon is a powerful statement. I think there are a lot of really good political cartoons, and there are a lot like what you said. Like, there were ones of Condoleezza Rice, there were ones of Obama that I was like, this is blatantly racist. Like, this is blatantly racist. Why doesn't anybody have a problem with this?
There was one in particular, so it was Bush and then Condoleezza Rice as a parrot. And I think the point was that she's just parroting things that Bush had said. But they gave her like these really huge lips. And, like you can still say that's Kamala, but why? Or I'm sorry, Condoleezza. But why the huge lips? Like, and of course the cartoonists are like, it's not racist. Like, it's just a and you're like, but this like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
There was another one that was parroting her as with the wind. There was one that was like parroting her and like made her the like Mammy character in Gone with the Wind, and that's clearly what it was. And like, you can do this, you can have the same message without
without this background.
Yeah.
Yes, I think there's, and what do I say? I feel like that goes on today. Still, is very prevalent, and it's like, oh, like, it's because it's still kind of subtle, right? Because there are probably hundreds of people who saw those cartoons and didn't think anything about that, right? And so, but there are other people like us, and we're like, that is blatantly racist. So I think that happens a lot with people of color when they're like political figures, is that there's this like, oh, I disagree with your viewpoint, and that's what I'm making fun of, but with the background of like this racist crap.
I think that's the disturbing thing about racism is the like making it funny because it's set this way, or they drew her lips this way, but it's funny because of the racist ideas behind it. It's funny because of the racist ideas behind it, and it's almost like if you're not looking for it, or if you're not a person of color, if you're white and you're not looking for it, you might miss it, and it gets more and more ingrained.
It's a dog whistle. It's like a term that I've recently learned. And I also recently have learned that, like, like all the crazy names in like the KKK, like those are all like the Grand Wizard and all those like weird titles. That has a root in like, oh, like we're just playing. Like, this is just like, we're just being goofy.
Right.
And so if you think that we're like seriously offending you, like you just don't get the joke.
Right. You're just not taking the joke right.
Yeah. And I think that's carried on till now, where it's like, oh, well, like you're just being too sensitive. I'm like, yeah, I do. I think that's another thing with like dog whistles and that kind of thing. It's like, oh, like you've just mistaken my meaning. Like, I wasn't trying to be racist. And that's problematic, because it's like, yeah, it's so subtle that people who do that like can disclaim the fact that they're signaling to other people.
Right.
And it's really hard to like to disprove that and be like, oh, like you're being blatantly racist. Because it's so subtle. Like,
one of the cartoonists, I don't remember which one, but one of the cartoonists like pulled the "my black friend told me to do this" card. Like, my black friend said it was okay. It's not.
It's not okay. Yeah. And so I think it will be interesting to see, like, given our history, right, the way Condoleezza Rice was treated, the way Chisholm was treated, that it'll be interesting to watch and see over the next couple of months or even days what surfaces or comes out of Kamala's nomination. I've already seen some blatantly racist things that people have shared on Facebook. So I think it will be interesting to watch how this goes, and even more like if like those sort of cartoons persist, right? To notice whether or not there's a backlash. Like, are people more aware now? Will people say like, no, that's not okay? Because that would be a wonderful thing. You know, like, okay, we're making progress. Right? Like, you did this, and like everyone was like, nope, not okay. So I think that will be really interesting to watch and see over the next, year or so, I guess. Right? Elections next year.
Oh no, it's like days. Not days, but like very soon.
Sorry, guys.
Go on, everyone. Make sure you're registered.
Still in March.
Right.
I mean,
make sure you're registered because it's this year.
Not next year.
Not next year. You got to do it now. Sorry. My brain is just gone, guys. I apologize sincerely.
Brain is also gone, and you forgot that it's in a couple months. Make sure you're registered. But I think the point of why we're doing this video now is that we all need to be aware, right? Like, we need to be paying attention. And if you can, call out the bullshit.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that is a huge reason for us doing this video now, is that be aware and be active in calling things out when you see them.
Yeah.
Because I think Elizabeth and I were talking, and I think Micah and I have had this conversation too. It's like, it's not enough to be not a racist. You have to be an anti-racist. When you see something that is racist, you have to call it what it is.
Yeah.
And so be vigilant, guys. The 5 of you that watch our videos.
We also, I think, when each of us was doing research for this, like talking about calling it out, like none of us could find an article that was specifically about the treatment of Black politicians, much less female politicians.
Yeah.
And it was very surprising. I was shocked that there was not, like, no one had written about this.
Yeah. Because, like, this isn't new. Like, the 4 of us didn't just, like, suddenly come upon this idea. Like, this isn't a new idea. And it's fascinating that there isn't an article, not even by, like, a shitty website. Like, there's not even a shitty blog out there.
Couldn't even put it on Facebook anymore.
Do you guys talk about... I find that fascinating if people want to talk about that. Like, why aren't there articles?
Yes. I think that is really fascinating. And I think a lot of the reason is that it's been so subversive. It's been, just this background thing, and people are paying attention to, like, the front, right? They're paying attention to the joke that's being made, or like the policy, or the fact that, she's a parrot and she's just doing what he says, or, or the scandal of whatever it is they're talking about, right? Like, oh, we're so enthralled by this scandal part of what you're saying that you completely missed the fact that you wouldn't be saying this if she weren't a woman and a person of color. Like, if it were someone else, you wouldn't have brought this up at all. But instead of, like, taking the time to think about that, we just react, right? Oh my gosh, did you see this? Right? Instead of, like, taking the time to think about, why are you even mentioning that?
Yeah. I think that goes a little bit to, like, can you do your job versus, like, why are we talking about, like, what happened with, like, she had an affair with a married man? Like, does that mean she's bad at her job? Like, do we care because we gossip, but we should care about, can she do the job?
Right. Yeah. Yes, there is. And I think that was where I got the idea for us to talk about this, is that someone on my Facebook called her a whore. And I was like, for what exactly? For what reason is she a whore? And my first thing was just like, that's sexist. Like, you're just like, that's slut shaming and that's sexist. And then as I thought about it more, I was like, oh wait, no, like it's more than just a sexist thing. Like it's also a racial thing. Like you would not have said this, and like in like the dialogue that this person and I were having, or these people, there was several white men that I was talking to. One of them was like, well, she's a whore because she slept with a married man. And my response to him was like, oh my God, what kind of married man would cheat on his wife? He didn't comment on that. Interestingly enough.
I think that's a really good tactic to like flip it like that. That is really good.
Who would do that? Oh, our president.
Yeah.
Several times.
Weird, right?
But we don't care, right?
Yeah.
We don't care.
We talked about this a little bit. Like if we as Americans as society have set the bar of having affairs is okay because the president did it, then you can't then apply that to like it doesn't work like that. You can't have a cake and whatever.
Exactly. And I think for me, there's a lot of like when I have those conversations, they're like, well, it's fair. I'm like, how? And if you cried about it when they did it to Trump, but then you turn around and do it to someone else, like that doesn't make you a better person. Like that doesn't make it fair. Like, oh, they trash talked him, so I can trash talk her, and it's fair. Like, no, that's not how fairness works. What's fair is that now that you know better, you do better.
And this idea of like we need to elevate the conversation anyway, I feel like, especially when it comes to politics. Like we need to be better.
Absolutely. I 100% agree on that. It's like I'm telling Elizabeth, it's sort of like it's like my hashtag right now. Hashtag know better, do better. Let's get that started. So I think that's sort of all that we had to say about this.
Make sure you're registered to go vote.
Yeah. Vote. It's super important. It's so important. Right. So make sure you're registered. And I would say if you can't go on election day, please
early
go
voting is wonderful.
and vote early. I know that a lot of you live in Texas and you can only absentee with a reason, but if anyone else outside of Texas is watching this and you're considering mailing in your vote, please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't do it. Please go in person and vote. Go to early voting. Figure it out, please, because the post office is a shit show right now. And I would not put your ballot in the
mail. Watch out for smear campaigns.
Yes, watch out for smear campaigns. Pay attention to them.
Yeah. Oh, and call out the bullshit if you can.
Yeah, call out the bullshit when you see it.
Yep.
So, thanks for watching our video. I love you guys. Stay safe out there. Don't be a racist and wash your hands.